Okay, YouTubers, this is the Angryprepper. So today's video, we're going to talk about the truth about Palma Island, part of the Canary Islands. Now, the Canary Islands are 8 islands total. Palma, is one of the islands that has volcanic activity currently going on right now, right? So it had an eruption about a week ago, and with that eruption, people are watching La Palma very closely because there is a southwest shelf or flank of the island that could fall off into the ocean. Now, theory goes that if this flank falls off into the ocean, it can cause a mega tsunami over here in the United States, as long as Central, South America, parts of Africa. So everybody's watching this island very closely. Now, today, or earlier today, on the Canary Islands, there was a partial landslide into the ocean. That was actually watched on, or confirmed on somebody's video, I'll put the name here now, where they were watching or surveillancing this part of land slide into the ocean. It wasn't much, but it was enough to get people a little more concerned. I'm not going to obsess about it, which a lot of people have done and are doing right now. They are obsessing about this island and whether or not this flank is going to fall off into the ocean or not. Guys, if it falls off into the ocean, it is what it is. We will adapt and handle it and get the hell out of harm's way. For those of us that can make it out of harm's way. You should definitely know your location and what elevations are around you, what elevations you can safely get to in a safe amount of time. So that goes without saying, especially with all of this going on. But I'm not worried about it, and the reason why I'm talking about the truth about the La Palma Islands is that upon further research, the 300-foot wave, or in one case I heard a 1,000-foot wave, that is not likely. Can a 300-foot wave happen? Absolutely, but there needs to be more force behind that, behind the ocean to bring a 300-foot wave to the east coast of the United States, or for that matter, South America, Central America, and Africa. Now, a lot of places are going to see a tsunami, or we might not see anything at all. The problem with this is, guys, this is all theory. So we haven't seen anything like this in our recorded history. And yet, there has been landslides that cause tsunamis, but nothing like what might happen in the Canary Islands. The major threat with it is the southwest flank of the island falling off into the ocean. Now, there are a couple of theories out there. One theory was actually written in a paper by Simon Day and Stephen and Ward. They wrote a paper called The Canary Volcano, Potential Collapse and Tsunami at La Palma, Canary Islands. That was a paper they wrote back in 2001. So these guys were actually theorizing in this paper about how bad a tsunami would be. Now, of course, they're nerds, right? They go to the University of London, and they've been watching the Canary Islands for a long time. Now, this paper was written 20 years ago. So by them looking at this and looking at the same flank that they are hoping doesn't fall off but might fall off, they've been watching this for probably longer than 20 years now. They did the math and the research and the velocity of the land falling into the ocean, and the amount of energy that the ocean's going to create to create a tsunami on this side of the world. Now, the only people who would see a 300-foot tsunami would be England and or Spain. I know a lot of people will write in their description section or in their title, 300-foot tsunami coming. That's more for, again, England and or Spain that would get hit with that tsunami. They would get hit with a 50 to 100 meter wave. And it's not guys, it's not one wave, it's waves. We'll get to that in a little bit. Now, eruptions in the past have created a fault line which is about 9 miles long and sits 6,000 feet above sea level on La Palma Island, right? So the fault line, which was created over time and through eruptions, created a nice fault line that you can actually walk through. You can hike through this. And as you're hiking through it, you can see the separation on the land. Now, this flank, if you will, had dropped 13 feet in the past and stopped. So it didn't continue to go. Even though there was a bit of a landslide today in Spain, the rest of the flank didn't move. Now it's believed that the next major eruption will cause the fault line to tear in half, or tear open the island rather, and then that part of the flank, if you will, this part here, will slide off into the ocean at 427 miles per hour. That's the max speed it would reach hitting the ocean, and then create a tsunami from there. It will cause a bubble dome once it drops into the water, about 3,000 feet, which is fucking high, guys, right? That's over 300-story building, right? So being that it will cause that initial dome, a lot of the people on near the Canary Islands or in the Canary Island area will absolutely get hit with a higher wave. Not a 3,000-foot wave, but a higher wave. Again, this is if the land just drops into the water. Now, that's a theory of it dropping into the water, reaching speeds up to 400 miles an hour as it enters the ocean. The other thing is, guys, here's another thought process. Now, this article, or paper, if you will, was giving us the worst case scenario, which we should always, as preppers, entertain the worst case scenario, but we shouldn't dwell on it. Now, what if this land takes 20, 30, 40 years, 50 years to fall in, but during that period, it's inching its way into the water? And as it inches its way into the water, it drops in. But it doesn't drop in at an alarming speed, it just slowly starts settling into the water. Now, if it does that, we're not going to get the tsunami that everybody thinks we might get. So you got to keep in mind, guys, we are given the worst case scenario. That doesn't mean the worst case scenario is going to happen. It's just something to put in the back of our heads should it happen. Now, needless to say, if this flank does fall into the ocean, this will be the most catastrophic collapse of land we've ever seen in human recorded history. This would be about 500 billion tons of rock, gravel, and dirt falling into the ocean, right? So there, guys, is the problem, because this size, this flank, the size of this flank, is the size of Manhattan. So now just look at Manhattan and picture something like that sliding into the ocean. Yes, it can absolutely possibly cause a tsunami, but there are so many different variables that we might not even get a tsunami. We might only get 10-foot waves. Now, granted, 10-foot waves is still high. 80-foot waves is still high. 100-foot waves is still high. But to sit there and say we are going to see a 300-foot wave is wrong. It's more like we're going to see 80 to 90-foot waves, which, again, is still a lot of water. Now, there's one part of me that thinks that New York City might see higher than 100 feet of water, only because the water is going to hit a choke point, which is called the Hudson River. So from the harbor into the river, that's where a lot of water is going to swell, and it might swell a lot higher than we think. But again, we don't know, because this is all theory. Now, once this flank falls into the water, it's going to create an energy, and this energy is going to transfer from water particles to water particles through the ocean. So it's not so much as the water itself is moving, it's the energy moving across the water, right? So when the energy moves across the water, a lot of the boats that sit out in the middle of the Atlantic might not feel it. And it's going to go under them without them even knowing. And then once it gets to shallower depth, then it will start to swell. And when it starts to swell, that's when you get that effect of the water starting to go over the edges of whatever landmass it hits. And that's going to create the tsunami. Now, we've seen the Japanese tsunami, and we've seen the Indonesia tsunami, or the Sri Lanka tsunami, sorry. We've seen what that looks like, and we've seen how big those waves got. Now, when I said that the energy is moving from water particle to water particle, but what happens is a lot of that energy, guys, from the Canary Islands all the way to the United States is going to get lost. There's going to be a lot of energy lost. Not a little bit, but a lot. So now, again, how much water are we actually going to get? That is the whole point of this video, is that it's all theory. And for anybody to say we're getting a 100-foot wave, we're getting a 200, we're getting a 300, that's irresponsible. We don't know what we're going to get. Listen, we could get 10 feet of water. We can get 150 to 200 feet of water. We don't know. But we need to be a little more responsible when we talk about the tsunami and the effects of a tsunami hitting the East Coast. The other issue is, guys, again, not knowing what the wave is going to be or how high it's going to be. And depending on how fast and how big it is going to dictate how far inland it's going to get. Now, the safe bet is to get anywhere between 15 to 20 miles inland. And in our case, those of us on the East Coast, it's straight west. So it's not northwest, it's not, it's not southeast, it's not any of that crazy shit. It's west. straight across, right? Now, I mean, you can go northwest, it'll get you away from the sea, or you can go southwest, and that'll get you away from it. But try to head straight west and try to get 20 miles in. 20 miles, guys, is nothing. I mean, hell, you can even walk for 5 hours and you'll be 15 miles, right? So another, what, 2 hours after that, you'll be 20 miles in, or rather, sorry, 25 miles in, excuse me. And you'll be at a safe distance. Now, some people are going to argue, well, what about, if it's all flatlands? Well, there's not really any flatlands if you're going to be walking west. You're always going to run into some elevation. If you look at a topographical map of the United States, you'll see that. You'll see that once you start heading west and you get probably about 15 miles in, 10 to 15 miles in, you're going to run into either hills, mountains, or things of that nature. So you'll be in a safe distance, and then once you get elevated, you'll be fine. Now, New York City has a lot of elevation here, but we also have tall buildings here in New York City. So we also have that advantage if we can't get out. Now, Millionaire Row, which is right behind me, you can run to one of those buildings if you absolutely have to. If you can't get out of the city, you can put yourself in there, and all you have to do is walk up 8, maybe 10 floors. Now you're 80 to 100 feet above, well, you'll probably be a total of, about 120, 130 feet above sea level. Again, depending on how high those waves get. Now, here is the bigger problem that no one's talking about with the tsunami. The bigger problem is, it's not the one wave, guys. It's not a movie. It's not one wave comes in and then that's it. It's multiple waves. That's why it's a tsunami or a tidal wave. There's waves behind it. So it's not one, it's multiple. And those multiples can last up to 8, 12, 24 hours. We have to keep that in mind when dealing with tsunamis. It's not one wave, it's multiple waves. So that means you have to, not even have to, but you'll be out of that affected area for a long time. And even with the aftermath, even when the water recedes, goes back to where it belongs, the amount of devastation that's going to be left behind is going to be unreal. Let's just say New York City. We're going to use New York City as an example. New York City gets destroyed by a tsunami. The water recedes. You're not coming back here. Maybe if your apartment was above the water line, you'll be lucky, but what about the rest of the building that's going to be infested with mold? What about the destruction that goes behind it? What about the bodies, the cars, some buildings that might even collapse? There's a lot of destruction that's going to go along with that. So with that being said, guys, that is something to consider once you leave. Once you leave New York City, you're not coming back. It's done. All right, guys, so this is the Angryprepper. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to subscribe to this channel, you can also head over to the Angry Truth channel and the Angryprepper channel. And you can also listen to my podcast, which I just reestablished. I am walking back one thing I said about podcasts. I might be starting the Angry Truth podcast because I think that's a lot easier for me to gripe into a mic than it is to actually do a video when there's not much I'm showing you in that video other than news clippings and things like that. All right, guys, so stay tuned for the Angry Truth podcast as well. Other than that, guys, thank you for watching.